It's Saturday, March 29th, the third week of Lent. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
How are you this morning, Joe?
Pretty all right.
I like pretty all right.
Pretty all right.
I'm pretty all right also. It's Saturday. And as we've said before, it's always a wonderful thing when you don't have to be at 7:15 reporting for duty.
Yes, that's always preferred.
Yeah. Um, so the fast continues. I'll give a fast report. A fast report. Woke up again just smiling like a little baby, like a happy little baby. The body is cleansing, autophagy, mitophagy, brain-derived neurotropic factor kicking in, T cell production, stem cell productions, all the stuff that happens after 2 and mainly 3 days of fasting.
Man, I love gibberish.
Well, it all means something. You know, T cells. I had a friend who had
I just think of Resident Evil. I think they call the zombie virus the T virus in there, so that's all that comes to mind.
Nice. Well, we all have our own schema of knowledge, but I have a friend who had multiple sclerosis, and she would desperately try to go to Mexico to get stem cells injected because you can't do it in U.S. And I'm not here to talk about the morality of all this. I'm just saying she would get stem cells and then feel better for a while.
Right.
She was quite an artist, a beautiful person, and unfortunately is no longer with us. But yeah, it's sad because we now know through science that when someone fasts, particularly after the third day, your body starts producing like stem cells from the marrow. And so just fasting would have also the amount of stem cells are more, the body produces more stem cells than an injection. And the absorption rate, of course, much higher when your body's producing it. So your body is repairing itself. And it's a beautiful thing. The video you may have seen is referring to brain-derived neurotropic factor. People used to think that the brain, once you lost something, you know, like smoking all that weed, dude, killing those brain cells, like Plutarch and Billy Bob up on the poop deck, that you never get that back. But now we know that there's brain plasticity, and the brain does change and move, expand. And in depression and anxiety, when they do brain scans, there's a lot of degrading of the I'm not sure exactly what, perhaps the synapses in the brain, and there's another word that starts with D. It's been a minute since I've been in my university study of the brain. Dendrites, thank you. Dendrite synapses, those things degrade, and that is one of the effects in the brain that is correlated with depression and anxiety. But upon fasting, and the stem cell and the brain-derived neurotropic factor, which has only been recently discovered. Recently, I mean 10 years. I don't know, something like that. Those things rewire and build dendrite synapses and brain connections so that it lifts people out of depression and anxiety, among many other things. But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. I'm just saying this fast is going well. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to do it because, as I said, I didn't want to. And there have been difficult moments where I thought that I would go back to Egypt for the sweet, sweet flesh pots and onions and leeks back in Egypt. I'm encouraged in the fast by tending to these dogs and horses. Why? Well, because all they care about is treats. And it's very clear that that's one of the realities of an animal. one of the realities of humans is that we are free to say no. Slewfoot, the Lord of the Flies, aka the adversary, also known as the devil, the great dragon, he convinces people that freedom is getting to do whatever your desires pull you towards. Like your freedom is a really clever animal who's more able to get their desires satiated. But that only makes you a super animal, still an animal. The gift of mankind is that we are able to say no. That's something the animals cannot do. They cannot say, the horse never goes, you know what? It's this certain time of year. I think I'm going to stop eating for 3 days. Never even crosses the horse's mind. Never crosses horsey mind to do such a thing. Anyway, fast is going well. And then I just threw my pen in my excitement. I have to crawl down on my hands and knees under the camera here in case you guys want to know. But the beautiful thing about the fast is that it ends. And that happens tonight for Shabbat. And I started it yesterday, a beautiful pot roast. Oh my gosh. And I looked at Regacio, what's his name? He's a YouTuber who does cooking, and he does science. He does it real well. Anyway, I looked him up to see how he does a pot roast. I'm trying to get a bunch of different, many different recipes and kind of construct my own. And so he brought down this idea of putting a little tomato paste in there, because once it has the Mylar effect on it, it really enriches it and enriches the thing. So I have that. There's some Pinot Noir in there. I put in some fat in the water so that it's basically a beef stock. And of course, cooking it yesterday, smelling it in the house and not eating. Fortunately, I've been fasting for many years, so I'm used to that. But tonight, put it back on the heat it up, and have a beautiful pot roast. Of course, if anybody is watching this and interested in fasting, you can't just go 3 days and then boom, straight into pot roast. I mean, you could. My body could probably handle it. I've done it so much. But I will gradually, probably after noon, 1 o'clock, let's say, I will probably eat some of that beef stock, just sip some of it off the top of the stew to get my body prepared, maybe nibble a little cheese, something like that, just to get your body awakened and enlivened and ready for the feast tonight. Also, I'll be drinking wine tonight for the first time in days, and so the body needs to be ready for the carbohydrates, etc., etc. I'm just saying that in case people are watching it and want to fast and don't know how to do it and they screw themselves up.
Yeah.
Got to be careful.
You know. Absolutely.
So I actually had a beautiful, there's a lot that I wanted to say, and we'll see how things go. Fortunately, today is essentially a short page because we got a new question, question 13, the names of God. And the whole first part of the page is just delineating what the future questions will be, articles will be. So that goes by pretty quick. I wanted to tell you something, Joe, that I may have misspoke regarding the Shroud of Turin.
Okay.
I think I've told you before that I go through spurts, deep dives into certain subjects. And because of that image that affected me so much that I showed you, I've gone on to another deep dive. And I'm glad I did, because there's something I didn't understand that makes it even more mind-blowing. And it was kind of wrong. It was wrong what I told you, apparently. So I told you that the top few strands of the shroud on each particular thread. So each thread, when you're sewing, when you're making something, you have yarn, but the yarn has threads. And then each of those threads has microfibers.
Right.
The thread's not just like a piece of copper. The thread has numerous microfibers. Well, each thread on the shroud has about 150 average microfibers, 150. So picture a tube like this pin, which is one thread, and then that thread has 150 other little threads or microfibers that make it up. I had said to you that the top 2 or 3, which are smaller, this is very small stuff, way smaller than a human hair, smaller than a wave of light. These are small microfibers. I had said that the first 2 or 3 were burnt off by some way that no scientist has been able to explain yet, and that there was no carbon left over. So there was no like heat residue left over on these top few threads that were burnt off. And then the image on the shroud is sort of like pointillism, where you have numerous dots and you make the dots more intense, where the darkness is more intense so that you can start to see the shape of a nose and an eye. You've seen that kind of thing. Or sometimes people will take a bunch of photos and take the darker photos and the lighter photos and put them together so that they make another picture, you know? Somebody gets a lot of pictures of their family and then they put them all together and make a picture of mom with all those pictures, that kind of thing. That's essentially what's going on in the shroud because of the darker or lighter burnt or affected strands of the shroud. But here's what the real thing is that's still kind of puzzling, blowing my mind. It's blowing everyone's mind, all the scientists who know about the thing. What actually has happened is the outer rim of each thread, all the microstrands have been discolored. So it's not just the top has been scraped off. The strands are all still there. It's just the ones that are affected, all the microfibers around the whole circumference or circle of that thread have been affected. And nothing on the inside has been affected. That's what's puzzling to the physicists, because nothing does that. If some radiation pushes through something, it doesn't just affect the outside and not the inside. If some radiation goes through something, you can see through the whole thing. And so that's the puzzling part. And then, of course, some of these threads are more concentrated where the darker parts of the nose and the eyes of our Lord are. And then the lighter parts, there's less of those threads affected, and that's why you see the image on the shroud. So I just wanted to relay that because I told you it seems wrong before. Don't want to go into a big thing about the Shroud of Turin, but just to explain that to you. And there's only 2 hypotheses, not theories. We have no theories. There's no solid theory of how this has happened from any scientist, atheist, or Christian, doesn't matter. Nobody can figure out how this happened. There's no real theory, but there's a couple hypotheses. Hypotheses are very weak. They just have a kind of idea, maybe, but there's a theory is something that's been proved or demonstrated numerous times. So it's a more solid basis. There's no theories. There's only a couple hypotheses. And those 2 are a little shaky. Essentially, nobody knows how that image is on there. All right. I wanted to say something about yesterday. I said something about don't follow the herd and the idiots, about Expedition Bible, that awesome YouTube channel of that guy who has a master's in archaeology and who's grew up in the Middle East. The reason why I listen to this guy, and this has to do with science, understanding, which is what we're doing here in the Summa Theologiae. Remember what we said in the beginning. Thomas said this is for the unrudening of society. Unrudening of society. Much of the rudening of society comes from bad thinking. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So we're trying to unruden that. So I'm just trying to show about my thinking in this. I watched the video, the first couple, and they seemed, that was the beginning start. This guy seemed to know what he was doing. And he was actually going to the places and showing you, standing by the steles or whatever he's talking about. He goes and shows you, okay. And I'm like, okay, he seems to know what he's doing. And he's also showing you the actual things, and he's giving you background, and he's giving you references, and he always puts up references to the books It's not just like I'm doing here, hey, I heard something, but he's going, because that's his thing. I'm not an archaeologist. Because it's his thing, he gives all the references. So I'm like, okay, this guy seems to know what he's doing. Then I did research on the guy. That's the second step. I was like, well, what is his background and what is his education? Then I found out that he got his undergraduate degree from, I can't remember where, and he got his master's degree from the School of Archaeology in Jerusalem or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's a Christian school, though. And at first, I found my long-standing atheistic bias. Remember, I was raised by an atheistic father. I was like, as a Christian school? And then I was like, well, wait, what am I doing? All schools were Christian until not too long ago.
Right.
Like, every scientist we know, every philosopher comes out of Christian schools, except Aristotle, of course. So anyway, I had to reject that deep bias that I had. So anyway, that's why I quote this guy. Could there be other things that I find out about the guy that makes it to where he is discredited? Sure. But it just doesn't seem so. He does have an education in school, but the main thing, like I said, he has that intellectual education, that book learning, but he's also spent a great deal of time in the field, and he's friends with many well-respected archaeologists and spends time with them in the field. So that's why I'm admitting his evidence and teaching and talking about it here on this podcast or whatever the heck this is. All right, we got the shroud thing. I also want to talk about a beautiful thing that the Lord did for me today, this morning, yesterday. So, this is going to apply to our journey through the desert. So can we show the skull moving to Hecheth or whatever it is? Can't remember.
Do you know what the actual thing is? Because I think when I did the slides for this, I might have skipped a thing. What was the last one? Oh no, I didn't. We're good. Yeah. So I was confused by it yesterday, but yeah, we're good.
Tahat. Yeah, that's where we are. And notice how we've gone in a big circle.
Mm-hmm.
And then notice how as we move up, we're getting closer, closer, closer to the promised land. Oh my God, God's going to do it. He's finally going to bring the bride I've been waiting for all these years. He's going to do it. And then we start going in a bunch of even tighter, more constricted circles. Or you call it a circle if you want. We're moving around. But notice how these circles are constricting more and more. The first was that big one that came down from the shore over to the right. And then it was a big circle. And then now we just went through this little more constricted circle. And now we're heading up closer and closer. It makes it seem like we're finally getting there. And then an even more constricted circle. And then we're going to be shot out further away almost than we've ever been. That's why I had that character in the book say, perhaps the journey through the desert is an algorithm. These things are all done by their decisions also, just like an algorithm. Your decisions determine what is the possible direction you could go. It's also very much like a D&D game. So I wanted to just show those increasing constrictions. This applies to your life, folks. I don't know if I have to explain it out to you, but in your life, you're going to feel times of great expansion, joy. Everything seems to be working out. It's all open and beautiful. We love those times. Those are the times of the pot roast. Sabbath, drinking the wine. And then there's going to be times of greater and greater constriction. And notice what always happens, though. There's always this moment where it seems like the thing you've been longing for is about to be given to you. That's why St. Paul said these things are done for us, done in history. God's providence allows these things as examples for you. The first thing that happened is we leave Egypt. Oh, it seems like God's on our side and everything's going to be great. And then we have those 3 days of traveling through the desert. And then you see Elam in the ahead in the desert, and there's water. And you're excited. God's about to give us water. And you get there and the water's bitter. Boom, boom, boom. And then we go over to traveling. We get the Torah. God comes down on the mountain. It's awesome. And now we're going to head towards the promised land, right? Nope. Big old circle, big fat circle. You feel kind of constricted. Then you go up again and it seems like it's about to happen, and then more constricted. And then it seems like it's going to happen again and even more constricted. Things get even worse and worse. And then you're thrown further away. Just realize that, folks. That's what's going to happen in your life. What happens in the life of the one who doesn't follow God, though? Just never gets anywhere. Or stays back in Egypt around the flesh pots. And the comforts rule you. You become enslaved to your passions, enslaved to your desires, more like the donkey, more like the horse, less like the man God. So I was yesterday having a shtickle difficulty, Joe, with myself.
How so?
I don't know if you've ever been disappointed in yourself, Joe. Probably not. You're such a Mitch.
Yeah.
Fortunately, when I'm disappointed in myself, it's only me. You know what I mean? I don't have to drag a wife and kids through it.
Right.
But that really must add to the sweetness, the sweetness of the pot there. But anyway, I was disappointed in myself because, as you know, the plan was go out into the desert, no social media, no YouTube. And I just can't stop. I just can't stop. Now, let's make things clear here, guys. And this is important. I'm saying this not just to make myself look better. I'm saying it for you guys to not get down on yourselves, because getting down on yourselves, whipping yourself, and flagellating yourself is the thing that will keep you from progressing. That's not the way it works, folks. Always upward and onward, always looking towards the star that Peter talks about, the morning star, the star. And this is Beaver Galleon language. You're navigating by the star, not by looking at how crappy the sails are, not by looking down in the ocean. You navigate by keeping your eye on the star, which is Christ. So let's put it in perspective. And you guys need to do this too. Check in yourself. When you're down on yourself, you need to look back at your progress. There was a time, first of all, in my youth, before I knew Christ, where I had 7 complaints in the juvenile hall from 7 different families in 2 different stretched across 2 different cities, from assault and battery to arson. That was early Craig. That was my destiny. And then there was a powerful conversional moment to Christ, and things changed. But then all that bitterness got turned into Christian bitterness. So instead of like kicking people in the face with my foot, I kicked people in the face with my Jesus words. Don't we love when Christians do that? And then, but things have got progressively better. And then there was a time where I got bitter at God, stopped going to church, and then I let all the women that were coming after me in the band and everything, the lifestyle I was living, which I was rejecting, I opened the gates and let the cows come in. And then when I would party, I would drink like a whole bottle of whiskey. The point I'm getting at is this. And then there was times when I looked at, let's say, bad things on the internet. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. There were times of that. Now, by God's grace, not only am I not doing any of those things, I'm making progress. But part of the progress is failure. I mean, that's what progress means. You're going from failure to failure, which is actually victory to victory if you're climbing upwards on the progress ladder. So I have to keep that in perspective as I'm getting down on myself, that I'm not stopping to watching these YouTube videos, because all the YouTube videos I'm watching are very good. I mean, the stuff I used to watch was horrific, terrible. So that's good. Thank you, Lord. Give myself a little credit, give God's grace a little credit, thanks and praise to Him that all the stuff I'm looking at is useful. Biblical archaeology, Shroud of Turin. But my plan going into the desert was to not watch it at all. And so I was feeling a little down that I couldn't stop doing that. I've also watched some of the news. Usually I watch the actual feed from public addresses or actual Congress meetings. I don't typically watch like news channels. I don't want to hear it through these goofy people. I want to hear the actual thing that the president's saying, or the Secretary of State, or the Democratic leader of this and that. I want to hear what they're actually saying, not what some person said or chose to not say that they said. But anyway, as I was feeling bad about that, I'm sitting there praying, and I look at the little picture of little Therese, Saint Therese, whom everyone should know that I love dearly. And I was like, little Therese, you said that I just read that quote of hers that said, I won't be happy in heaven unless I can do little favors for people down on earth. And I was like, well, Therese, how about you do me a little favor and keep me from watching these videos? I've already done a novena to Our Lady of Mount Carmel to stop doing these, what I call bacon candy cakes, little interesting videos going from thing to thing. Or Mike Elias, what I talked about with the ping pong table, what are those little round things that float through the air? Dandelion things. And they all have a bunch of seeds on them. Those things floating over the ping pong table that confuse you and make you not able to play ping pong better, which is a metaphor for prayer and virtue. And those little seed things are important because each of those has numerous seeds in them. And that's what YouTube is. You watch one video and, oh my gosh, this dandelion has a lot of interesting other seeds. And then you follow that seed, and what does that seed turn into? Another interesting seed and another interesting seed. So that's what I was trying to uproot out of my life. And so I'm like, Mother, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, help me. And then yesterday I was like, little Therese, help me. And then just after I had prayed the little Therese thing, I went to check my messages. And the only place I get messages is Instagram, Facebook, and email. So I went to check my Instagram message. And I never, thanks be to God, I never scroll through Instagram. I never scroll through Facebook. I never doom scroll, unless you count the YouTube thing, doom scrolling, I guess, but it's not really. It's doom surfing. I don't know. But anyway, the first image that comes up is of little Therese lying dead in her, in her beginning before the casket after she had died. And then the quote was the actual help that Therese wanted to give me. The quote that was under her image was the answer to that prayer for a little favor. But listen how God works. You think the favor is keeping you from doing this thing. But listen to what Therese says. Yes, it suffices to humble oneself, to bear with one's imperfections. That is real sanctity. I shall repeat that. Yes, it suffices to humble oneself, to bear with one's imperfections. That is real sanctity. Now remember, she's saying imperfections, not grave sins. She's not saying, just bear with your fornication, No, we're talking about imperfections, maybe even not even sins, but to bear patiently with your imperfections. And that's what the Desert Fathers call dispassion. Some people think that dispassion means you no longer have the passions of gluttony, lust, sloth, and all those. No, dispassion means you've come to the place where you have humbly accepted your enslavement to the passions. That when you do something passionate that you don't want to do, you go, well, yeah, that's how I am. You don't become impassioned about your passions, is the point. So that is Therese's little way of talking about dispassion. There's another thing I wanted to say, but we've gone too long. So I'm going to just start this Thomas thing because he's got some beautiful stuff to say to us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I say ladies because it's on YouTube, but the in-person teaching will be a men's group, just FYI. But online, ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning question 13, the names of God. Let's go, St. Thomas. This is going to be an interesting little ride. After the consideration of those things which belong to divine knowledge, we now proceed to the consideration of the divine names. For everything is named by us according to our knowledge of it. It's interesting that he puts that on as a tagline. He could have just said, after the consideration of those things which belong to divine knowledge, we now proceed to the consideration of divine names, period. And let's go. But he tags this little tag. For is saying why we're doing this. For everything is named by us according to our knowledge of it. That's why the whole previous thing was how God is known by us. I'm just saying that so you can see the very clear stair steps and intelligence of St. Thomas. And that's what he said at the introduction of the Summa, that a lot of teachings are very confusing. He wants to give a very clear, reasoned, and step-by-step progression through catechesis. Okay. Under this head, there are 12 points of inquiry. Number 1, whether God can be named by us. Number 2, whether any names applied to God are predicated of him substantially. 3, whether any names applied to God are said of him literally, or are all to be taken metaphorically. 4, whether any names applied to God are synonymous. 5, whether some names are applied to God and to creatures univocally or equivocally. 6, whether supposing they are applied analogically, they are applied first to God or to creatures. 7, whether any names are applicable to God from time. Ooh, that's an interesting question. 8, whether this name, God, is a name of nature or of operation. Does the name God refer to God's nature or his operations? Number 9, whether the name God is a communicable name. 10, whether it is taken univocally or equivocally as signifying God by nature, by participation, and by opinion. Going deeper into the univocal, equivocal question. 11, whether this name, who is the supremely appropriate name of God. I'm sure who is I am, the great I am. 12, whether affirmative propositions can be formed about God. Affirmative. Because remember, we said we can only know God cataphatically or apophatically, what God is not. So is there any affirmative propositions that can be formed about God? Okay, Article 1, whether a name can be given to God. And here comes our friend Larry. Let's go, Larry, up on the Beaver Galleon, up on the deck for his first question of the morning after sleeping late. It seems that no name can be given to God. For Dionysius says that of him there is neither name, nor can one be found of him. As it is written, what is his name? And what is the name of his son, if thou knowest? Proverbs. Now, Larry came out hard. I mean, he's given some great arguments from authority here. Dionysius says straight up, of him there is neither name, nor can one be found of him. End of story. Larry's probably wanting to drop Mike, Let's go to objection 2, Ralph. Further, every name, these two guys work in tandem. You notice that? Larry always comes, they probably talk down, I bet they have 2 hammocks next to each other down in the hole. They probably discuss how they're going to get Thomas every night. Because Larry says something and then Ralph goes further. Further, every name is either abstract or concrete, but concrete names do not belong to God since he is simple. Nor do abstract names belong to him, for as much as they do not signify any perfect subsisting thing. Therefore, no name can be given to God. All right, let's see what objection 3 has to say. That is Shimon. Further, nouns are taken to signify substance with quality. By the way, we're about to go into an English lesson. It's funny. I love writing. I love words. I love art, poetry, music that have songs, but I just don't like getting into the weeds of grammar. Further, nouns are taken to signify substance with quality. What the thing is and its quiddity, its quality. Verbs and participles signify substance with time. Movement, verbs, time, and movement, moving from one thing to another, one state to another. Pronouns, the same with demonstration or relation. Demonstrate what the thing is or its relation to something else. But none of these can be applied to God, for he has no quality, nor accident, nor time. Moreover, he cannot be felt so as to be pointed out, sensibly felt. And even if you're feeling something, like you say, oh my gosh, I felt the Holy Spirit, you are feeling a procession forth from the Spirit of God that he's allowing in your sensual part. If you are feeling something, it is not the essence, because the essence is above the sensual feeling. If you say you're feeling God and you say that it's actually God that you're feeling, I mean, in his essence, then you are reducing God to matter and sense. Big no-no. I'm saying that because often in the Pentecostal world that is done, and the understanding is not very clear of the distinctions. You are feeling God in a manner of speaking, but you are not feeling his essence, him and himself. He is transcendent. Nor can he be described by relation, inasmuch as relations serve to recall a thing mentioned before by nouns, participles, or demonstrative pronouns. Therefore, God cannot in any way be named by us. Boom. These guys are coming out. They're getting better. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Am I just a big silhouette right now, Joe?
No.
You can see my pretty face.
Yeah.
Have you noticed my hair's cut?
I didn't know it was cut or if you tied it back or what was going on.
I just tied it back. I was trying to trick you. You're too smart.
No. Yeah.
Smarty pants, Joe. Smarty pants, Joe. On the contrary, it is written, the Lord is a man of war. Almighty is his name. So interesting to me that Thomas chose that one for the argument from authority. The Lord is a man of war. Almighty is his name. There's a lot I could say about that, but I won't. How much time do we have? How much time have we used? Whatever.
37 minutes.
I knew it was going to be like that, but
Yeah.
I felt it was good to say what I said the morning. Oh, just knocked over my water bottle. I answer that, since according to the philosopher, who's the philosopher, Joe?
Aristotle.
That is right. And he's about to quote someone that Mike Elias, Leah, get ready for this one. This is going to be fun. He's about to do I think the first time he quotes this person, and it's going to be fun for all of us. Words are signs of ideas. Semiotics, Joe. Remember our retreat when I started it off with the games of semiotics? Words are signs of ideas. The ideas, the similitude of things. It's just a similitude of the actual thing. The name is not the thing. It is evident that words relate to the meaning of things signified through the medium of the intellectual conception. We understand words through our intellect. I also like that he uses the word conception. At the beginning of this, Mr. Budd told me not to use the word concept, but principle. And I agree. I'm not disagreeing with the august Ryan Budd. And also Dr. Rebard agreed with him. But you use the word concepts when it's a concept, and you use the word principle when it's a principle. So Thomas uses the word conception here, having to do with concepts. It follows, therefore, that we can give a name to anything in as far as we can understand it. But you can't understand God. So what are you going to do, Thomas? Now, it was shown above, question 12, that in this life, we cannot see the essence of God, but we know God from creatures as their principle. God is the principle of creatures. And also by way of excellence and remotion. Remotion is pulling away things, which is also interesting in regards to the Shroud of Turin. and this is something I've never said publicly, and it's in my novel, and it ties into all the kind of stuff that I've talked to you, Joe, about, and Mike Whitered about my conception of being and how we see in epistemology and blah, 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 blah. But the way that you see the image on the shroud is by remotion. Those dark threads are not there. It's what is not there that is showing you what the face of God. These are things to just be pondered, folks. But God from creatures as their principle, also by way of excellence and remotion, removing. In this way, therefore, and this is also apophatic theology. In this way, therefore, he can be named by us from creatures, yet not so that the name which signifies him expresses the divine essence itself. Perhaps we saw that coming. He's going to say we can name God, but just as long as you understand, science is about making distinctions. The word science comes from skia, to cut or to slice. So you're slicing, making distinctions. Just like I had said previously, when the biologist first learns biology, he dissects a frog. Dissection of the frog is to pull it all apart. The point is not for it to stay apart. That's diabolic. The devil wants it all to stay apart. The point of the science, the skia, the cutting, is that you might see how it works, connects, so that you might better know how to bring patients back to the holistic, whole, to make them whole. That's the purpose. Satan's purpose is to split it apart just to keep it apart, that it never become whole. Thus, the name man expresses the essence of man in himself, since it signifies the definition of man by manifesting his essence. For the idea expressed by the name is the definition. Remember, definition is a constricting principle. You define, the fence defines the paddock of the horse's paddock, where they're at. The fence defines it. So obviously, in the essence of God, there can be no definition, because you can't confine the eternal. There is no definition of God. He is not defined. He is the I am. He is all that is. He is eternal. Reply to objection 1. Here we go, going after Larry. The reason why God has no name, or is said to be above being named, is because his essence is above all that we understand about God and signify in word. He just leaves it at that. Again, as I've said many times before, we're repeating things, but we're staring at our beloved's hands. This should be a meditation, guys. One of the problems with my YouTube watching is the craving for novelty. I might have told you guys before at the lounge, Joe, about that dream I had years ago of walking into a room, seeing a bunch of people at tables. And they're all doing something. They're all sitting at tables and they're all looking down at what's in front of them. And no, I think I was sitting at the table. I'm in a room. There's a bunch of people. And I look over at what they're doing, and they're all taking pieces of bubble gum, chewing it for a little bit until just the most sweetness leaves, and then they're putting them back down and picking up another one and chewing it. And just as the most sweetness of it leaves, they set it down. And then I looked at these people, they're not eating, nor are they even chewing gum. They're just tasting each new one, and then spitting it out. And in the dream, I felt disgust for these people. These people are idiots. These people are base. And then as I'm looking around in the dream, disgusted at these people, I look down in front of myself, and there's a bunch of pieces of gum. I was doing the same thing. And then in the dream, there was like some tissue that it was on. I took some tissue and tried to cover it up. And then the dream was over. I was pulled out of the dream. Very important. The cover-up is worse than the sin. That's why one of the reasons I'm confessing these things so openly, and why you guys always talk about how I easily confess my faults and everything to everybody. That I learned. You've got to not do that, not cover up. God doesn't like that. He wants you to be very open and clear. so that you can realize it's his grace that's going to move you out. Once the time comes for the deliverance, there will be a day that I will be delivered from this, just like I've been delivered from numerous things in my past. And the pattern is always the same. And now it connects back into what I was saying about the Exodus. That's why I said it. The pattern is always the same. You feel like you're broken free. Then you feel like you're getting closer. And then there's more of a constriction. It even gets worse. And then you're set free again. And finally, I'm done with this sin or this imperfection, whatever. And then it goes back a loop again. And you think you're getting closer. And then it's even more constriction. It gets even worse. And then you're thrown further away. Just be aware of this, people. I know that one day I will be freed from this. But right now, the Lord wants me to learn, as little Therese, the doctor of the church, said, you must be humble and accept your imperfections. That is true sanctity. Reply to objection 2, because we know and name God from creatures, the names we attribute to God signify what belongs to material creatures, of which the knowledge is natural to us. And it's natural that we know material creatures, horses and dogs and stuff. And because or anything, it's not, creatures doesn't just mean dog, it means anything created. And because in creatures of this kind, what is perfect and subsistent is compound, whereas their form is not a complete subsisting thing, but rather is what whereby a thing is. Hence, it follows that all names used by us to signify a complete subsisting thing must have a concrete meaning as applicable to compound things. Whereas names given to signify simple forms signify a thing not as subsisting, but as that whereby a thing is. As, for instance, whiteness signifies that whereby a thing is white. And as God is simple and subsisting, we attribute to him abstract names to signify his simplicity, and concrete names to signify his substance and perfection, although both these kinds of names fail to express his mode of being. For as much as our intellect does not know him in this life, he is. You go to the furthest extent of our intellect, where Reepicheep goes over into the land of light, out over the horizon of the sea. The furthest our intellect can go, God is there. So our intellect can't go out that far, but there are things we can know about God. And that's what Thomas is trying to explain to Ralph here. That when we name things, we are pointing to either man, and man has to do with the substance, the general manness of a thing. But then we also name things to express certain modes. That's why Ralph was talking about, I think it was Ralph that was talking about, no, it was the next one. But there are different modes of things, ways that they act. So we give names to those things. And Thomas is trying to express that we can begin to give names to God if you understand it in that way. We're not naming his exact essence, which is outside and over the ocean's edge in the light and eternal of God. But we can begin to name things about him that get us ever closer to understanding that grand mystery, which is not graspable until the beatific vision, in which by some wonderful miracle of glory, he will let us, in some sense, grasp his essence. Reply to objection 3, I'll just do this for funsies. To signify substance with quality is to signify the suppositum with a nature or determined form in which it subsists. And we'll hit that more tomorrow. Joe, what time is it? How much time? Joe? Is there still did we lose Joe? Why do I suddenly feel so alone? Looks like people are writing. I'm gonna go check out what people are writing. Joe, are you there? What happened to you, Joe? Let's see what people are writing. We got Steve. This look may increase your chances of meeting that special someone. Oh, hey, you look dapper with your hair pulled back. Just tuned in. Love the haircut. Yeah, it's just pulled back. Thanks, guys. We'll see. I know people. I've had people. This, by the way, this thing, Haley and Steve, much respect to you, of course, but here's the thing that rubs me the wrong way a little bit. In the world that I've been in before, of music, when let's say I received a great deal of attention from the ladies, I had long hair and all this stuff. And then when I get into Catholic world where everyone's clean cut, there's a lot more khakis. Hardly ever saw khakis back in
Very true.
where never saw khakis. A lot of khakis going on around here. Everyone often says that about getting more girls with the dapper blah blah blah. But the question is, do I want that girl? See what I'm saying? All right, that's enough. Guys, this is all straw. Go pray, meditate, and love. Amen. Bye.